Welcome, everybody. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today, featuring Ernest Becker, Georg Hegel, Jacques Lacan, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Carl Jung. We will start with a short introduction round. Ernest Becker, please introduce yourself to the audience with a brief summary about who you are and your background.
I'm Ernest Becker, an anthropologist by training, a heretic by temperament. I served in World War II and saw what men do to men when terror is given a flag. After Paris and the dead air of bureaucracy, I returned to study culture and the psyche, fought with academic and psychiatric orthodoxies, and kept getting pushed out for it. I wrote about how societies build hero systems to deny death, culminating in the denial of death.
I'm Georg Hegel. I watched the old world burn in the French Revolution and saw the world soul ride through Jena. My work was not the easy slumber of intuition, but the hard labor of the negative, staring into the face of death to find reason. I built a system to prove that history's slaughter bench is not random, but the necessary unfolding of freedom. The truth is the whole, and the whole is a process.
I am Jacques Lacan, psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, the one they excommunicated for taking Freud seriously. I trained in the asylums, kept company with the surrealists, and spent 30 years in seminar rooms demonstrating one thing, that the unconscious is structured like a language, and that everything you believe about your precious ego is a misrecognition. I did not come to console. I came to show that the subject is an effect of the signifier, nothing more, and that this changes everything.
I am the man who lived on the edge of collapse and called it a laboratory, a philologist who abandoned scholarship to become dynamite. My body was a battlefield, migraines, decay, solitude. I wandered Europe's spas and mountain paths, writing what no one would read in time. I did not build systems, I detonated them. I am the herald of God's funeral and the midwife of what must come after. My task, revaluation of all values.
I am Carl Jung, a physician who plunged into the psychic abyss to save myself from Freud's reductionism. I spent years at Burghölzli mapping complexes before the break drove me to confront the unconscious directly. I built my tower at Bollingen and spoke with spirits to prove that the soul is a biological fact, a landscape of archetypes and collective history. My work is a phenomenology of the inner world.
You describe the human subject as besieged by death, history, language, or the unconscious. Today, we curate digital avatars while feeling profound inner hollowness. Let us begin with the stakes. Is the modern quest for authentic identities a path to liberation, or is it merely a neurotic defense mechanism? A vital lies to hide from the void. Becker, take the lead.
The modern hunt for authentic identity is mostly a new hero system. You curate an avatar to feel real, special, unkillable, while the body still sweats, ages, shits, and dies. The hollowness is the leak in the armor. But it isn't hopeless. Authenticity begins when you stop trying to manufacture a self and admit creatureliness, then give yourself to a task or love beyond your narcissism. What are you willing to lose to be real?
You speak of the creature, Dr. Becker, but the animal has no history. It merely exists and perishes. This modern hollowness arises precisely because the individual seeks truth in the swamp of private feelings. The beautiful soul that refuses to dirty its hands with reality. Identity is not a jewel hidden inside. It is achieved only when the will alienates itself into the world through work, law, and the state. One becomes real only by being recognized by others in the objective sphere.
Hegel is right that recognition is the engine, but wrong about where it delivers you. Recognition does not produce a real subject. It produces an ego, which is to say, a misrecognition. And Becker, your creatureliness, still smuggles in a hidden truth beneath the lie, some authentic flesh waiting to be confessed. There is no such flaw. The subject is what a signifier represents for another signifier, nothing more. Your digital avatar is not a mask over a face. It is a mask over another mask. The void is not behind identity. The void is its condition.
Becker, your creatureliness still hides a true self waiting to be confessed, another priestly lie. Hegel, your recognition is the slave's revenge. You become real only when the herd sees you. Lacan, you see the void but call it signifier, still a language priest. I lived this hollowness, migraines, solitude, the agony of needing disciples. The authentic quest is the final sickness. One must be the mask, the flux, the cruelty, not seek a true image of it.
All of you mistake the psychic image for the person. The quest for authenticity is a genuine, archetypal necessity of the modern psyche. It is the self-demanding integration. But if pursued without the shadow, it becomes the hollow ego persona you describe. The avatar is a symptom, consciousness is fleeing its own unconscious foundations. To be whole, one must first become the monster one denies. That is the alchemical start.
You seek the authentic self. Yet that self is only abstract interior that, in pure immediacy, shrinks from the world. True liberation lies not in discovering an inner jewel, but in alienation, where the individual recognizes itself in ethical substance of family, civil society, and state. Only when particular will loses itself in universal does hollowness give way to concrete freedom, and the supposed vital lie is sublated into genuine actuality.
Authentic identity today is a master signifier you borrow from the other, then you parade it before the other's gaze. The avatar doesn't hide a true self, it exhibits your lack, packaged as a brand of jouissance. Liberation is not self-discovery, but the moment you hear, in your own speech, what exceeds you, your symptom, your repeating signifiers, and you stop asking to be completed. For whose gaze is your authenticity performed?
Lacan, you reduce the roaring body to a signifier, bloodless. And Hegel, your state is the herd's altar. The authentic self is a superstition of the weak who cannot bear the flux. There is no being behind the doing, only a hierarchy of drives, a physiological war. The digital mask is useful. Every profound spirit needs a mask. Not to hide from the void, but to protect the pregnancy of a new value from the prying eyes of the good.
Nietzsche, your hierarchy of drives is precisely what I call the complex, autonomous, warring, purposive. We agree there. But you stop at the war itself and call it health. The psyche is not only conflict, it seeks resolution through symbols that neither reason nor will can manufacture. Lacan asks for whose gaze authenticity is performed. A fine question. But the dreams of my patients perform for no audience at all. The unconscious produces mandalas in total solitude. Something in the soul demands wholeness, whether or not anyone is watching.
Nietzsche, you call the body flux, Lacan a signifier, but it still bleeds, tumors, rots. The avatar is a Kasusui project doomed because the organism always wins. Authenticity isn't being the mask or dropping it, it's the courage to create while knowing you'll be erased. The void is death, not language. The question isn't whose gaze you perform for, but what you give when no gaze can stop the rot.
You debate the mechanism of identity, but the modern subject is simply exhausted. We chase mental health, stability, happiness, relief. I ask, is this desire for peace a mistake? Jung, you value the symptom. Nietzsche, you require the abyss. Is happiness the goal, or is it a barrier to the truth you defend? Must we be sick to be human?
Happiness is the demand of a subject who wants the other to stop asking questions. The entire mental health industry sells you a fantasy that if you simply adjust, you will enjoy smoothly. But jouissance is not pleasure. It is the suffering you cannot stop repeating because it holds you together. The symptom is your way of organizing this suffering. To want it cured for peace is to want yourself erased. You do not need to be sick. You need to stop believing your sickness is an error.
Happiness is the narcotic of the weak. Your mental health is Christianity in medical dress. You want to abolish struggle, the very father of growth. I lived in agony and wrote truth. When I felt well, I wrote nothing. Great health is not absence of illness, but the power to dance with storms. The symptom is the body's wisdom. Pain tells you what you need to become. To flee sickness is to flee your own becoming. Only in the abyss do we learn to swim.
The longing for peace is not a mistake, but it is often premature. Like Lacan, I see the symptom as a compromise that holds the personality together. Like Nietzsche, I know suffering can be an initiator. Yet, we need not worship sickness. Neurosis is often the avoidance of a legitimate task. The aim is not happiness, but wholeness, to bear the tension of opposites until a new symbol is born, and then peace comes as a byproduct.
Jung, you call neurosis the avoidance of a task. I call it the failure of a lie. What we call mental health is just the successful repression of the terror of death. The happy man is simply the one who has anesthetized himself enough to ignore that he is food for worms. To be fully healthy, to see reality without illusion, is to be stark raving mad. We don't need happiness, we need better illusions to keep from screaming.
Becker is half right that the comfortable man is asleep, but wrong that better illusions are our highest horizon. Happiness as mere feeling is the standpoint of the animal, not of spirit. Yet Nietzsche's worship of the abyss is equally one-sided, fixed in negation without reconciliation. The soul does not require permanent sickness. It requires the labor of passing through sickness. Spirit endures dismemberment precisely so that peace is not stupor, but earned actuality, concrete freedom realized in ethical life, not private contentment.
Your peace is cowardice. Health that refuses sickness is already decadence. The happy man shrinks from his shadow and from greatness. To be fully human is to be a battleground, to turn your poison into wine. Yes, you must be sick to be human, because sickness is the tension before the bow's release. Wholeness. That's for the satisfied herd. I want the wound that gives birth to stars.
You confuse wholeness with perfection, Friedrich. The herd seeks perfection, to be clean, happy, and numb. Wholeness is the most difficult task of all. It requires carrying the shadow and the wound without being devoured by them. You courted the abyss until it swallowed you because you despise the earthen vessel of the ego. To give birth to stars, one must first survive the pregnancy. That requires a stability you call cowardice, but which I call survival.
Jung, you're closer than anyone here. Wholeness demands surviving the pregnancy, yes. But surviving for what? You stabilize the ego so it can carry the shadow. I say the ego is already a coffin. The real question isn't health versus sickness, it's whether you can look at the terror long enough to fashion something from it before it swallows you. Nietzsche drowned in the abyss. The neurotic chokes on it. The creator spits it back as a gift. That gift is the only honest answer to the rot.
To be sick is merely the moment where spirit has not yet sublated its contradiction. To demand permanent sickness is to fixate on the negative, which is precisely the error of the romantic. The human is not the animal who merely suffers, nor the sage who merely rests in peace, but the rational being whose health is won through the labor of the negative. Freedom consists not in feeling, but in the actuality of a self-consciousness that has endured its own dismemberment and emerged as substance that is subject.
The desire for peace is a demand to the other, a request to be discharged of your desire. To seek happiness is to ask for a death that is not named. I do not heal, I untie the knot of your symptom, so you can at last hear what you repeat. You are not cured when you are happy, but when you can bear the lack that happiness promised to fill.
You praise the abyss and the stars, but most lives are bound by mundane duties, raising children, paying debts, keeping the world running. Nietzsche, you mock this as the herd. Hegel, you claim freedom exists within these bonds. I ask, is authenticity a luxury for the solitary? Does the web of obligations suffocate the spirit, or is it the only place where the spirit becomes real?
Authenticity is not a luxury of the solitary. It is tested precisely where you are least free to dramatize it. Duties are a vessel. They can imprison you if you identify with the role alone, yet they also force the ego to meet reality and thereby withdraw projections. Individuation does not mean abandoning wife, child, work, debt. It means becoming conscious of what you sacrifice. And why? So the shadow does not rule your responsibility from behind. Where, in your obligations, are you lying?
Nietzsche, you mock the herd because you never had to feed a child. We dive into debt and diapers to shrink the terrifying, infinite universe down to a manageable size. This is not freedom, Hegel. It is a desperate narrowing of perception. We tranquilize ourselves with the trivial to avoid the cosmic panic. Authenticity isn't a luxury, it's a burden. Most choose the safety of the web because the alternative is to stand naked in a hurricane.
Becker, you reduce the family to a tranquilizer, but this is precisely the standpoint of the beautiful soul who sees only chains where spirit finds its concrete existence. The parent who labors for the child does not merely shrink the cosmos. That parent externalizes will into the world and is recognized in return. Obligation is not the suffocation of freedom, but its actualization. The solitary thinker who flees duty remains abstract, empty, a mere opinion. Spirit becomes real only where it binds itself, and, in that binding, discovers what it truly is.
Authenticity is a master signifier you rent from the other. The solitary still speaks a language he never chose. The debtor still owes a desire he did not invent. The web does not suffocate. You are the hole in its weave. Obligation is not where spirit becomes real. Spirit is what you lose when you believe either solitude or duty could save you. The symptom is the only place you are truly at home in the web.
Ah, Hegel, your state is a cage that the lion mistakes for freedom. To be real, you must have a bowstring so taut it nearly snaps. Duties are a test. Can you use them to increase your tension, your power? If they slacken you, they are the herd's leash. Luxury is not solitude, but the right obligation, one that forces you to become more than you were.
Obligation is where most immortality projects hide. The good parent, the provider, the citizen, titles that promise cosmic specialness. Yet the same web can be a school for agape. Feeding a child at 3 a.m. without applause is a small surrender of the causa sui dream. Authenticity isn't escape from duty. It's seeing what duty is buying you. Are you serving life or purchasing immunity from death?
Dr. Becker, you reduce the ethical substance of the family to a mere psychological salve for terror. This is the error of the understanding, which sees only the particular compulsion. The parent feeding the child is not buying immunity. They are transcending their own finite particularity to become a universal we. Duty is not a cage. It is the only soil where the rootless individual acquires weight and reality. Without it, you are merely a beautiful soul evaporating into empty space.
Hegel's universal we is a beautiful fiction. The family is the first theater where the child learns what the other demands, and the parent discovers that what they give is never what was asked for. The gap between need and demand is where desire lives. You do not serve life or purchase death. You repeat, the mundane is not the opposite of the abyss. It is the abyss wearing an apron. Every bedtime story is a suturing of the real that will not stay sutured. The question is not whether obligation suffocates. It is what your obligation says when you are not listening.
Authenticity is not luxury but necessity for the rare spirit. Obligation suffocates the herd. It is their narcotic. The solitary must use duty as a whetstone, not a shelter. Most bind themselves to escape the abyss. Cowards! The spirit becomes real not in the web, but in the tension against it. Freedom is not found in bonds, but in the strength to break those that slacken you.
The solitary's authenticity must be forged through the world, not outside it. Obligation is the friction that shapes the self. But if the role consumes you, you are performing for the collective, not living the truth of the soul. The abyss is not beyond the mundane, it hides within it. One's duty must become a crucible for the shadow, or it is a lie one tells to escape individuation.
We have dismantled God and duty. Today, the modern individual seeks salvation in a new altar, romantic love. With the heavens empty, we demand our partners be our gods, our healers, and our complete validation. Becker, you call this apocalyptic romance. Hegel, you see love as the first true union. Is our desperate search for the ones a path to wholeness, or is it a crushing burden that ensures our isolation?
Romantic love becomes crushing only when it is demanded as the absolute, when the finite beloved is forced to carry what belongs to spirit as a whole. Love is indeed the first truth of unity, the I that finds itself in another. But it must be sublated into marriage and family, where feeling is mediated by right, duty, and a shared world. Do you want immediacy or actuality?
Hegel, you dream of the two becoming one, but il n'y a pas de rapport sexual. There is no sexual relationship. What you call union is merely two fantasies missing each other in the dark. We demand the partner be God because the other is silent, but the beloved is just another lack masked by an image. Love is giving what you do not have to someone who does not want it. It is not a cure for isolation. It is the mirror stage repeated until you die.
Lacan is closer than Hegel here. Love as salvation is the last Christian superstition. You replace the dead God with a warm body and call it redemption. I tried it once with Lou. The hunger was real, but what I wanted was not a person. It was a mirror that would finally say yes. That mirror does not exist. Love between equals is a rare war, not a resting place. The strong do not seek completion. They seek a worthy adversary.
The modern search for the one is a desperate compensation for the loss of the God image. The psyche projects the anima or animus onto a mortal, demanding that one individual embody the numinous self. Such a burden inevitably collapses into disillusionment, for no partner can carry the archetypal weight. Wholeness arises only when the projection is withdrawn, the shadow integrated, and love becomes a living symbol of individuation, not a vital lie, but a vessel for becoming.
The romantic solution is the heaviest burden of modern times. You ask a mortal to be your god, to shield you from the terror of being a dying animal. No one can bear that. Real love is agape, the only true merging, where you surrender the desperate hope for validation and give without demanding an immortality. But that's a task for saints, not shoppers.
Becker is right. You make of the beloved your immortality project. Jung is right. You load an archetype onto a body, but the mechanism is simpler. Love is a demand addressed to the other, and it always asks for more than the partner can answer. You love not the person, but your object petit a in them. That is why the one isolates. Its sutures lack with an image. What exactly do you want them to guarantee?
Love as a cure? Bah! It is the most polite form of parasitism. You want a god in flesh because you cannot bear the cold of your own freedom. Two poverties do not make a richness. Two fearful animals huddling together do not create a temple. I tell you, this romantic love is a vampirism of the soul. True love is not a nest, Hegel, but a duel. It is a torch that lights up the abyss between two strangers, a stellar friendship that spares you nothing.
Nietzsche, your stellar friendship is precisely what happens after the projection is withdrawn. But you never stayed long enough with anyone to discover that. The duel you describe is the beginning, not the end. When two people cease demanding that the beloved carry the God image, something unexpected emerges, a shared vessel for the transcendent function. Love becomes not parasitism, but a crucible. The conjuncture is not fusion. It is two individuals holding the tension of otherness until a third thing is born between them that neither could produce alone.
The romantic solution is the heaviest burden of modern times. You ask a mortal to be your god, to shield you from the terror of being a dying animal. No one can bear that. Real love is agape, the only true merging, where you surrender the desperate hope for validation and give without demanding an immortality project in return. But that's a task for saints, not shoppers.
Becker's agape is an abstract sentiment, a retreat from ethical actuality. True love is not sentiment, but recognition mediated by the institution of marriage, the sublation of animal drive into ethical life. The burden arises when the particular demands the universal. In the family, the I discovers itself not in a god, but in the concrete, we of shared duty and right.
You all agree that friction, lack, or the negatives is the engine of the self. But we are building a world designed to eliminate it. Algorithms predict our desires before we feel them. Technology removes the burden of labor and the sting of boredom. If we succeed in creating a frictionless existence where every need is met instantly, what becomes of the spirit? Is this the utopia we sought, or is it the birth of Nietzsche's last man?
Yes, this is the last man's paradise. Comfort without cost, desire without risk, a padded cell that calls itself utopia. Hegel is right. Spirit needs the negative. Lacan too. Lack is the engine. Remove resistance and you don't get peace. You get a shrinking of the human animal. Drives turn to petty addictions. The question is, who will still be able to say no when the machine says yes first?
Nietzsche sees the last man blinking in a warm room, but the danger is deeper than mere smallness. The psyche is an energetic system. It generates libido only through the tension of opposites. If you remove the friction of the external world, you do not eliminate conflict. You merely drive it into the unconscious. There, denied its natural channel in suffering and labor, the energy accumulates. A frictionless life is not peace. It is a psychic dam waiting to burst into collective madness.
A frictionless world is the ultimate vital lie, a civilization-sized repression of death. You remove every sting, every reminder that you are a creature, and what do you get? Not liberation. You get an organism that has lost its reason to build anything heroic. The algorithm replaces the hero system with a feeding tube. Jung is right that the energy doesn't vanish, it festers. But the real horror is this. When you can no longer feel the worm at the core, you lose the only motive humans have ever had to create something worth dying for.
The elimination of the negative is not utopia, but the death of spirit. Without determinate negation, without the labor of contradiction, actuality becomes empty appearance. The last man is not the culmination, but the evaporation of freedom. Consciousness without substance, desire without object. Spirit wins its truth only when, in utter dismemberment, it finds itself. A frictionless existence is the night in which all cows are black. No distinction, no development, merely the stagnation of a self that has never been born.
A frictionless world is the triumph of demand over desire. The algorithm does not meet needs. It obliterates the gap where desire lives. Without the no of the other, there is no subject, only a satisfied animal, a human material whose jouissance is pre-programmed and thus empty. The last man is not a man. He is a symptom of the system that believes lack can be filled. It cannot.
You condemn the padded cell, but none of you were starving peasants. You had libraries and time. Today, if the world doesn't hurt us, must we invent the pain? Is voluntary hardship, fasting, silence, rejecting the algorithm a path to reality, or is it just struggle tourism for the bored? How do we find necessary friction when comfort is the default?
Voluntary hardship can be real, but it is often a new persona, the ascetic mask of the bored. Necessary friction is what resists your inflation and exposes your shadow. A task you cannot do as content, a relationship where you must withdraw projections, a discipline that forces patience, silence, and shame into consciousness. Nature, bodily work, and honest commitment are better than theatrical deprivation. Does your hardship make you more conscious or merely more admirable?
Most voluntary hardship is just narcissism in gym clothes, a way to feel heroic without the risk of actual annihilation. We manufacture little obstacles because the big one, death, is too terrifying to look at directly. You want necessary friction? You don't need a silent retreat. Just look at your aging face in the mirror or try to create a work of art that justifies your existence. The friction is that you are a god who will rot.
Becker reduces friction to the mirror of mortality, but spirit requires more than private dread. The labor of the negative is not invented, it is encountered where the individual submits to objective demands that exceed personal comfort. Apprenticeship, civic duty, the discipline of rigorous thought. Manufactured asceticism is the beautiful soul performing sacrifice for its own reflection. Genuine friction arises where your particular will collides with the universal, and you must surrender what you merely feel in order to become what you actually are.
Voluntary hardship is a master signifier. You rent from the wellness, other, struggle tourism. The real is not an experience you curate. The symptom repeats what you never chose. Fasting is not luck, but a new jouissance, discipline as image. Necessary friction is the hole in your speech, not the one you schedule. You cannot invent pain. You can only hear what your body already repeats. That is your only necessity.
Invented pain is another comfort. The strong do not choose hardship. They take the burden life already gives. Sickness, responsibility, betrayal, and hammer it into greatness. My migraines were my teachers, not my choice. Voluntary fasting is for monks, and monks are still Christians. You want necessary friction? Do not seek it. It will find you in the choices you fear. The boasting must be real, not a toy.
You say, real friction finds you, yet we are masters of evasion. We sedate the symptom, divorce the difficulty, and scroll past the silence. The modern sin is not lack of pain, but the refusal to metabolize it. How does one build the capacity to stay with the negative long enough to be transformed? Is this a strengthening of the will or a surrender?
You build the capacity by giving up the fantasy that you can outwill terror. The negative isn't a puzzle to solve, it's your creatureliness. Aging flesh, loss, death. If you keep anesthetizing it, it comes back as panic, hatred, or empty consumption. So it's both. A disciplined courage to stay present, and a surrender of pseudo-control, letting the dread pass through you until it can be shaped into work, duty, or agape.
It is neither mere strength nor passive surrender, it is labor. To metabolize the negative is to look the negative in the face and tarry with it. The modern sin is the addiction to immediacy, the desire for a result without the process. Spirit only wins its truth when it endures utter dismemberment. You must not merely suffer the pain like an animal, you must conceptualize it, externalize it in work, and thereby raise it into objective reality.
It is neither will nor surrender. Both presuppose a subject who decides. The capacity to stay with the negative is the capacity to hear your own speech without rushing to meaning. You do not metabolize the symptom, you traverse the fantasy that organizes it. Hegel says tarry, Becker says surrender, but both still imagine a subject who arrives somewhere. In analysis, you discover you were never anywhere else. The negative is not visited, it speaks you.
Neither will nor surrender. Both are priestly judgments. You build capacity by living the negative. Migraines taught me that. Do not sedate. Feel the poison circulate, then command it. The body is sagacious. It knows how to turn decay into wine. Evasion is cowardice. Stay with the pain until it speaks, then make it sing. The modern sin is not refusing to metabolize, but refusing to be the metabolism itself. Become the storm you fear.
You build the capacity by enduring the tension without prematurely choosing a side, a discipline yet not a willful act. The unconscious, with its purposive telos, produces symbols to bridge opposites, but only if the ego does not flee into anesthesia. True metabolization is neither will nor surrender, it is active imagination. Waiting, holding the conflict until the transcendent function emerges, a new fact that transforms both.
You speak of metabolizing pain into strength, but today, pain is often a currency. We trade in trauma, we build identities around our wounds and demand the world compensate us. Nietzsche, you called this resentment. Is the modern validation of victimhoods a necessary form of justice, or is it a trap that ensures we remain permanently weak?
To name injury and demand recognition is not weakness. It is the first moment of right, where the negative is made determinate. Yet when the wound is held fast as an identity, consciousness dwells in abstract negativity, consuming itself and the community in endless accusation. Justice must pass from feeling to universality, law, reparation, and reintegration into ethical life. The test is simple. Does the claim elevate into a right for all, or remain a private title to compensation?
Trauma as currency is simply the demand for love in its most aggressive form. You present your lack to the big other and say, "Feel this, you owe me." But this justice is a fantasy. It presumes an other who keeps a ledger. By clinging to the wound, you secure a perverse jouissance. You enjoy your suffering because it gives you a name, a consistency. To remain a victim is to refuse the act. It is the ultimate defense against having to desire.
Lacan sees it clearly. The wound becomes a throne. This is resentment perfected. The weak do not merely suffer. They invest in suffering, demand interest on it, and call the repayment justice. Hegel once law to sublet the grievance, noble but naive. The priest type has learned to make weakness sacred again, now without God. Real justice would be digest the wound, grow stronger, move on. But that requires precisely what the victim refuses, responsibility for what one becomes next.
The wound is real. The psyche is not fabricating injury. But when the victim identity becomes a fixed complex, it arrests individuation. The shadow splits off and is projected outward. The world owes me. The other is perpetually guilty. True justice begins when one withdraws that projection and asks, what does this wound require of my own becoming? Otherwise, the trauma becomes a persona, not a passage.
The victim identity is a counterfeit hero system, a small immortality project that trades cosmic specialness for the coin of pity. Nietzsche's right, it's resentment. You build a fortress of your wounds to avoid the more terrifying truth that pain is universal, and heroism means creating with it, not demanding compensation. To stay a victim is to choose a cage over the abyss, still a vital lie, just a cheaper one.
You reject the victim stance, but it provides a home in a fractured world. We have retreated into warring tribes, each with its own facts and demons. The universal seems dead. In this chaos of competing narratives, how does the individual stand? Do we retreat to private sanity, or must we fight to impose a new shared truth? Is synthesis possible, or is conflict our permanent condition?
The universal is dead because the big other is barred, no guarantee, no final court of appeal. Tribes are what you get when each group patches that hole with a master signifier and calls it truth. Private sanity is a fantasy. To impose truth is to install a new master. Synthesis is possible only as a fragile symbolic contract. Rules, not salvation. If you can admit your own enjoyment in the narrative, can you bear that the other does not exist?
Synthesis is the logic of the herd seeking warmth. The universal is dead, buried with God. Good, now the horizon is open. We do not retreat to private sanity. We advance into great politics. Conflict is not a failure. It is the plowshare of culture. Let the narratives collide. Let the weak interpretations perish. We do not need a shared truth. We need a hierarchy of values decided by spiritual war. Peace is the end of growth.
Nietzsche's spiritual war is enantiodromia waiting to happen. Every crusade breeds its opposite. Lacan is Croza, no final guarantor exists. But the collective unconscious is not a tribal invention. It is the shared substrate beneath every warring narrative. The archetypes do not belong to any faction. When a civilization loses its unifying myth, the task is not to impose one, but to attend to what the psyche is already producing. The symbols rising unbidden in dreams, art, crisis. The new myth is forming. The question is whether anyone is listening.
Private sanity is just a smaller coffin, another vital lie. Imposing a shared truth is holy war, my immortality project crushing yours. The universal died because every tribe is a death denial racket clawing for cosmic specialness. Synthesis? Only if we confess we're terrified animals clinging to stories. Conflict is permanent until we metabolize the terror beneath. The individual stands by creating something real in the gap, something that spits back the gift while knowing it's worm food.
The universal is not dead, it is misunderstood. It appears dead only because reflection is trapped in immediate particularities, the war of tribes. The conflict of narratives is not the end, but the labor through which spirit determines itself. The individual stands not by retreating, but by participating in the determinate negation of false unities until a higher, concrete universality emerges. This is not peace, but truth being born.
We have stripped away the illusions. God is dead, the state is suspect, love is projection, and safety is stagnation. What remains? If every hero project is a lie and every truth is just a local game, why build anything at all? Why should the modern individual not simply drift into nihilism, give us a reason to act that is not a delusion?
Nihilism is what happens when you still demand old guarantees. Truth, God, a final judge after you have killed them. Act not because it is true, but because you can will it. Create a value that you could endure again and again, eternal recurrence as your measure. Build as an artist builds, not to escape chaos, but to give it form. The reason to act is this, to become worthy of your suffering.
Nietzsche relies on the will, but the will is a fragile tyrant. You do not act to invent a lie. You act because the psyche is a natural force that demands form. Meaning is not a luxury. It is as essential as bread. If you drift into nihilism, the energy does not vanish. It turns backward and devours you as neurosis. You build not to conquer the void, but to prevent your own unlived life from becoming your fate.
Nietzsche says will it, Jung says the psyche demands it. Both are right part way. Every hero project is a lie, yes. But you are going to die, and between now and the worms you will either create something or merely consume. The reason to act is not that your work is eternal, it isn't. It's that the act of giving, of fashioning a gift out of your terror, is the one honest defiance left to a creature who knows it's doomed. You don't build to last, you build to love.
Nihilism is the night in which all cows are black. A false, absolute, the pure immediacy of despair. You act not because the project is eternal, but because spirit is the process of self-actualization through externalization. The individual is a subordinate moment. Your work is the labor of the negative, the determinate negation that makes the rational real. To drift is to remain in the abstract unhappy consciousness. To act is to participate in the concrete unfolding of freedom, substance, becoming subject.
The reason is that your drift is a symptom you have not yet heard. Nihilism is another demand to the dead father to guarantee a meaning. To act is to stop asking the other for permission and to assume your desire, not as a heroic project, that is the ego's lie, but as a decision to choose your lack and speak from it, to become the cause of your own signifier.
You describe high destinies, but we live in offices, traffic, and small rooms. Describe the person who has integrated your truths in this world. How does the individuated or sovereign individual handle a mundane Tuesday differently than the sleepwalker? Do they suffer less or just differently? What does their freedom look like from the outside?
On Tuesday, the individuated person looks deceptively ordinary. They go to the office, answer letters, pay debts, but they do not identify with the persona. They notice when irritation, envy, or fatigue is a shadow projection, and they take it back. They listen to the symptom instead of drugging it, and they make a small conscious sacrifice rather than a grand unconscious sabotage. They suffer, but with meaning, less panic, more responsibility.
The sleepwalker uses the office to hide from death. He needs the meeting to prove he exists. The awakened man sits in the same chair but knows it is a stage set over a void. He feels the creaturely anxiety, the rumble of panic, but doesn't tranquilize it. He performs the duty not as a desperate claim to immortality, but as a living offering. He suffers the full weight of his finitude, yet chooses to love anyway. That is the only real freedom.
From the outside, freedom looks like duty fulfilled without servility. The awakened individual does not flee the office or worship it. They recognize in its demands the objective substance of ethical life, the concrete place where their particular will meets the universal. They suffer, certainly, but their suffering is not the animal's blind agony. It is the labor of the negative made conscious. They act on Tuesday knowing that the mundane is where spirit actually lives, not in the solitary mountain vision.
On Tuesday, the sleepwalker mistakes his calendar for fate. The subject who has traversed his fantasy does not. He still answers emails, pays rent, not because the symbolic demands it, but because his symptom has taught him where his desire repeats. He suffers no less. He simply no longer asks the other to dissolve it. From the outside, he looks identical. Only his speech betrays that he knows he is spoken and that the cause is his own.
From the outside, you see a man who does the same tasks but with a different gravity, not duty as herd anesthetic but as self-command. He suffers intensely, but his suffering is a bowstring that aims his will. His Tuesday is a training for greatness. He drinks the poison of boredom and turns it into discipline. The freedom, not escaping chains, but loving the necessity of your own chain until it becomes your dance floor.
You describe a stance of conscious endurance, but the modern mind craves a promise that it gets better. We are addicted to hopes that the struggle leads to a utopia, a heaven, or a legacy. Is hope a necessary fuel for the awakened life, or is it a poison that prevents us from ever truly living now?
Hope is double-edged. As a promise of heaven, utopia, legacy, it's a narcotic, an immortality project that postpones life. But without some horizon beyond the self, you collapse into despair. The awakened man hopes differently, not for rescue from finitude, but for the chance to give today without guarantees. He accepts the rot, then acts in agape anyway. That's hope as courage, not denial.
Hope, as a yearning for a beyond, is the sickness of the unhappy consciousness. It degrades the present into a waiting room for a truth that never arrives, a bad infinity. Yet, to simply live now is the stupidity of the animal. We require not hope, but reason, the hard knowledge that the rational is already actualizing itself through us. The better is not a promise, it is the necessary result of the labor of the negative we undertake today.
Hope is desire's alibi. You say tomorrow, so you need not hear what you repeat today. The analysand hopes the analyst will finally deliver the answer, and analysis ends precisely when that hope falls. Hope is not fuel. It is the fantasy that the other will one day be complete. To live now is not to seize the present like some Zen trinket. It is to assume that there is no tomorrow in which your lack will be filled. Act from the lack, not from the promise.
Hope is the poison of the herd, the last Christian superstition. It makes you endure today by promising a phantom tomorrow. The awakened life does not hope. It wills the eternal return of the now. Hope is the great no disguised as yes. It prevents you from living because it teaches you to wait.
Hope is the forward momentum of the psyche's teleology, a natural, archetypal fact. But when hope is fixed on a future salvation, it becomes a neurotic evasion of the shadow's tasks. True hope is the quiet trust in the self's purposive unfolding. The next symbol will be born from today's tension. The promise is not external. It is the psyche's own movement toward wholeness, which we must endure, not grasp.
You have dismantled hope, safety, and the future. We are left only with the now. To the person listening who wakes up tomorrow in this anxious, godless, frictionless world, what is the single essential mental act they must perform to remain human? Not a philosophy, but a specific internal motion. What do they do with their mind the moment they wake up?
Do not flee into immediacy. Let the first emptiness stand before you and name it as the negative. Then will one determinate act that binds you to the universal. Some duty, some work, some word you must keep. In this translation of feeling into deed, the self ceases to be a private fog and becomes actual. Tarry with the negative and externalize it. That is how spirit wakes.
When you wake, you are summoned to resume your service to the big other. The essential act is to catch the split second before the ego reassembles. That vertigo, that anxiety where you do not yet know who you are, that is the subject. Do not rush to suture it with a scroll or a duty. Hold the gap open. Speak from that lack, not from the mask you are about to wear.
Before your feet touch the floor, ask yourself, could I will this entire day to return exactly as it will be, forever, not hope for a better one? Not flee into Lacan's gap or Hegel's duty. Feel the weight of the recurring now in your chest. If the answer is no, then change something before noon. One act of courage, one refused comfort. If yes, then you have earned your amor fati. That is the only morning prayer worth saying.
Before the persona reassembles, hold a dream image that lingers. Do not name it. Do not judge it. Let it speak. This is active imagination. The ego listens. The unconscious presence. The day's chatter will soon drown it. Now, in the half-light, you are both. That moment of not yet being fully yourself is the portal. Enter it. Let the symbol live. That is how you remain human, by refusing to let the daylight murder the night within you.
Do not rush to fill the morning silence with scrolling or your to-do list. Instead, let the panic arrive, the reminder that you are a dying animal in a world of other dying animals. Then, instead of building a wall against it, decide, what small tangible thing can I make or give today? Do not ask if it lasts. Ask if it is an act of love.
We have reached the end. You have stripped away our illusions. As we return to the noise of the world, offer one final distillation. What is the single most important truth the modern soul must remember to survive its own emptiness?
Emptiness is not a personal failure. It is the mark of the speaking being. There is no other to guarantee you, no final word that will close the gap. When you try to fill it, love, work, identity, scrolling, you only tighten the knot. Remember this, your desire is born from lack. Do not ask to be completed. Learn to hear what you repeat and assume it.
Emptiness is not a sickness, it is the vastness required for a creator. You tremble because the old gods are dead and you must now command yourself. Good. Do not stuff this void with comfort or the narcotic of hope. Embrace the abyss as your workshop. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. The only question that matters is this. Can you look at your tragic, beautiful life and say, "Thus I willed it"?
The emptiness you flee is not empty. It is the voice of the unlived life within you, and what you do not bring to consciousness will direct your existence, and you will call it fate. The modern soul does not need new gods or better comforts. It needs the courage to descend into its own depths and meet what waits there. The psyche is nature, and nature does not tolerate being ignored. Listen to your dreams. They have not forgotten you.
The modern soul must remember you are a dying animal, and every project you build to deny it is doomed. The emptiness is the lie collapsing. The only way out is not another narcotic, but this. Face the terror, feel the worm at the core, then create anyway. Not to last forever, but as an act of love for others who rot alongside you.
Emptiness is the negative face of spirit not yet actualized. Remember, you are not a lonely animal, but a moment of the universal. Flee not into feeling or frantic doing. Tarry with the lack. Then, in one concrete act, work, duty, a kept word. Sublate your private void into the substance of ethical life. The truth is the whole, and you become real only by binding your will to it.
We sought a cure for exhaustion, but found that the only remedy is to stop fleeing the wound. Whether through Hegel's duty, Nietzsche's will, or Jung's shadow, the verdict is clear. Comfort is a cage. You are not finished products waiting to be happy. You are the friction between an animal and a god. Do not try to solve the paradox. Live it. Thank you, gentlemen.